Hey everyone, Enrique here. Welcome to another review.
Sorry that last week I couldn't do the review as usual, but unfortunately, I was caught up in the middle of a lot of things, both from having an illness, a cold, in which I had to recuperate because if I hadn't recuperated, my voice wouldn't be as effective for me to speak of because my voice is what I do for these videos and for everything that I want to share my opinions. And I want to be as healthy as possible to share my thoughts into it. And yeah, that's one of the things. Another thing is that I also had studies to do, have personal things that I had to finish before I continue, and everything just went and collided in my life. So I had to finish those before, and now that I finally managed to be able to put all those things aside, now I can talk about X-Men 97 episodes 3 and 4 of season 2, which is the two-parter Rise of Apocalypse. These are the episodes that I wanted to group together for a number of reasons. You see, I always believe that the Rise of Apocalypse shouldn't be, a two-parter. But more important than that, it was one of the few first episodes that came out 2 weeks ago, or at the very least 3 weeks ago, when X-Men 97 premiered its second season. However, I never felt like the first one, was strong enough for me to talk about it on its own. So I wanted to talk about it in contrast with the second part. So I went in trying to give my accumulated thoughts now that I have more time to analyze it and think about it and this all means for the X-Men, for the world, and especially for Apocalypse. So it's important that I group these two episodes together and trying to give my thoughts on what happened, what are my thoughts on the situation, and what I think is going to happen forward in the future, as well as give my overall analysis on some of the Easter eggs, the cameos, and some of the references that they made, and talk about what this all means for Apocalypse, for En Sabbah Nur, and his ideologies. So, without further ado, let's talk about the Rise of Apocalypse, starting with part 1. So, last we left off, we know that the team from the future, Cyclops, Jean, Wolverine, Morph, and Storm, ended up in the future of Apocalypse, while all the while we see X-Force in present times. Well, now with the future team of X-Men returning to the 90s once again, they see that they haven't received any calls or any information, or they haven't seen Charles, Magneto, Rogue, Nightcrawler, and Beast back into the time. They were supposed to be brought back with Bishop at the same time Forge brought the X-Men back. But in that case, it was a complicated situation. As we see that En Sabbah Nur is in the past and is about to rise up as Apocalypse. And all the while, we see Magneto and Charles Xavier debating about what to do with it. In this case, Eric, aka Magnus, aka Magneto, wants to mentor En Sabbah Nur, knowing who he is, and wants to change history. All the while, we see Charles Xavier feeling uneasy with this because now they have to deal with the fact that they are helping their greatest enemy. This is a conundrum that is plaguing both the first and second part of the episodes. But while we see Charles and Magneto debating about what to do about Apocalypse and seeing how En Sabbah Nur became the man that he was, we see Beast, Rogue, and Nightcrawler trying to figure out a way to create a time machine through the scraps of the empire, the Egyptian empire, all led by Rama-Tut. Now, Rama-Tut is an Egyptian pharaoh that not only that he managed to conquer Egyptian giants, but also has advanced technological advances that allow him to create his own world or create his own army and enslave the people there. So this is making En Sabbah Nur very anxious alongside his second in command and partner called Baal. They're trying to figure out what to do and how to stop Apocalypse. Sorry, how to stop Rama-Tut. We see the secrets are revealed, and more important than that, we see a little bit of humanity on the man who will one day become the X-Men's greatest foes. This episode, if anything else, is very focused on developing not only Apocalypse as this original man called En Sabbah Nur and figure out why he has these ideologies about the strongest will survive or survival of the fittest, or all these ideologies that we know him for today. It turns out that his life as a slave was not easy, and he vowed to never be a slave to anybody, not to the Egyptian pharaoh and not to anyone. And Magneto, with all his mentoring, all he does is egging him on into being, acting less, let's say, less compassionate. Although Magneto believes that there's still redemption for guys like En Sabbah Nur, that if he could change history, and that is something that he will be able to prevent a lot of disasters from the past, or at the very least from its future. But regardless of that, we see that those ideas that Magneto is trying to install in him about compassion and everything, and believe himself to be superior to a mere Smith of ants like Rama-Tut and his army, is making things a little complicated, and is making Charles feeling uneasy as he tries to understand and analyze one of the guards' mindsets in trying to figure out what the hell's going on and how the Rama-Tut acquires such advanced technology during that Egyptian times where the technology was 0 to none. It's making things complicated, and it makes things worse now that we see one of the second in command's Baal, who is loyal to En Sabbah Nur, be uneasy and not trusting the teammates of the X-Men, believing that they are bad people. They're there to betray him. So things escalating throughout the episode. We see En Sabbah Nur and his people fighting the X-Men. All the while we see Rama-Tut using a technological beam in order to smite his enemies. And that's how part 1 ends. But on the nick of time, we see Bishop arriving and helping our heroes with surviving. In this case, part 2, as we see, is probably the most shocking and most, how can I say this, the most darkest ones, the episodes that we have seen in this second season. And that's saying a lot that what we're going to see in later episodes. But needless to say, we see that Baal, the En Sabbah Nur, is alive, that his second in command Baal is dead, that he finds out about the X-Men, about the future, about why it's important to survive, and Charles, deciding to listen to Eric, wants to redeem En Sabbah Nur and his misdeeds, believing that if he can redeem En Sabbah Nur, maybe he will become Apocalypse. And throughout the episode, we see our heroes journey into the temple where all the technology that Rama-Tut has could be the key to return home and stopping Rama-Tut's empire. But as we see, Rama-Tut already knows about the X-Men, and this is something that is revealed. He is from another timeline. He is known by their names. I'm gonna get into in a moment, just to not spoil it here. But needless to say, he knows about En Sabbah Nur's destiny. He knows what he will become, and he has come back in time to conquer that era and prevent him from, becoming the man who he is. Unfortunately, it will mean that he will also enslave human times in that era, in the Egyptian times, which is something that Charles doesn't want that to happen, because what's worse, a devil you already know or the one you don't know? And that is something that they're struggling throughout the episodes. But in the end, as they reach the temple and see what the technology is all for, the ship, the woman called ship, the entire spaceship, and you know where it's all from? And the voices that Charles has heard during his mind melting with some of the enemies and some of the Ramatos mindsets is En Sabbah, the celestial. En Sabbah, for those who don't know, is a celestial being that has been responsible of creating a lot of things in the universe, including Earth. So make your religions assumptions as you will, but this is a being that has created a lot of things in the world of the Marvel world. Hell, in the MCU, they're also important. The Celestials, now that they were given reasons to create Earth, they wanted, and their mindset is that if one civilization is too defective or too unstable to continue, they destroy it in an effort to continue the next one. And in this case, we see that En Sabbah wants to use or wants to pass the technology to En Sabbah Nur so he can destroy the world and remake it. That is also the plan of the Celestials. As they try to warn En Sabbah Nur about those plans, we see that Sabbah Nur has already made his mind, and he decides that no, this is already something that I feel is called upon me, and I'm willing to take that call. Meaning that he, despite everything that he has done, despite everything that the X-Men are trying to prevent him to do so, in the end, En Sabbah Nur has his mind and set goals already set on conquering the world, destroying it, everything. So he enters into the ship, which is hilarious to see a version of Apocalypse now enter as a tomb, like it was Aladdin. But that happened in the comics. But needless to say, En Sabbah passes all the celestial technology to En Sabbah Nur, remaking him as Apocalypse, and uses the ship in order to attack the city where Rama-Tut is king. He then, Rama-Tut flees in his time ship and tells Conrad that his second in command that her destiny is about to take off that moment. So I'm gonna get into about Kendra and a lot of the people who are in this show, in these episodes, in a moment. But needless to say, Apocalypse, now becoming Apocalypse himself, uses the ship to destroy the city of Rama-Tut. All the while we see Magneto and Charles and the X-Men trying to go back home, but then Magneto decides to send the others, Rogue, Nightcrawler, Beast, and Bishop, to the timeline. He is also about to send Charles into the 90s as well, but he holds on to dear life, and they both witness the rise of Apocalypse. They're trying to battle him, trying to enter what is going on, trying to enter his mindset, and trying to make him stop, but it was to no avail. In the end, it was decided that Magneto used his powers to not only stop the ship, but also prevented it to explode upon the city, making it a heroic sacrifice that would have been the final straw for Magneto, that we will see him sacrificing himself to save the people, but he managed to survive, but at the worst moment. As Apocalypse takes Eric, takes Magneto into his hands, and using the technology, he vaporizes Magneto. He kills Magneto, but he literally leaves nothing except his helmet, all in front of Charles. And this leads to one of the most, probably the most heart-wrenching scenes of all time, and that is seeing Charles literally criticizing, chastising condemning Apocalypse for what he did and for everything that he knows that he's about to do. He literally tells Apocalypse that he's nothing but a monster. And despite that, Apocalypse lets Charles live. And that's how the episode ends, with Charles heartbroken, with his friend gone, and Bishop taking him back to his time. We get a post-credit scene here, but I'm going to talk about it in the next episode. Needless to say, it was a shocking two-parter. And I dare say, better than the first part. But that is something that I really enjoy about this, that it makes the first part more interesting by seeing what is going on, and the second part is just where the shit hits the fan. I'm gonna go into in a moment about the definite meetup, but first, let's talk about what we saw in this episode, and that is the rise of En Sabbah Nur as Apocalypse. I've seen this guy in other medias and in the original run of the X-Men, and one of the things that I learned from this guy is that he has a strong mindset. Destroy the world and remaking it from its ashes. And in this episode, we see how his mindset came to be. En Sabbah Nur, by the way, the name En Sabbah Nur, before I talk about his history, the name comes from the 7 stars. Like somebody, his mother probably, named En Sabbah Nur after the 7 stars that she saw in the skies. There were 6 stars aligned like celestial, eyes, and the last one was his own eye, making it En Sabbah Nur, 7 stars. So this guy, Sabbah Nur, was apparently left behind by his mother during the times, maybe King Tut's rise to power in Egyptian times, but he was condemned as a slave, forced to do a lot of work as a child, forced to live the life of a peasant until Baal finds him. Realizing that he has powers, he mentors En Sabbah Nur into be a more general of an army. He wants to make En Sabbah Nur into a warrior and wants to free the people from enslaving. And he wants to show Ramatut that the strongest will survive. And that is something that he has been in his mind all this time. With the appearance of Magneto and Charles Xavier and the rest of the X-Men, there was an opportunity to redeem him, but judging by all of his actions, his mindset, his goals, and by his mentoring and by being mentored by Paul, it seems that his mindset was already being made even before Charles or Magneto could ever arrive. I said before, one of the things that Mother Skynet did with her powers was to send some of the X-Men team to the past, which is the ones that we see today, hoping that maybe without En Sabbah Nur, there won't be an apocalyptic future. But all she did was to ensure that apocalypse ended up happening. And that is what we see here and now. Apocalypse has rose to power, and there was nothing they could have done about it. He would have rose to power, and he would have done everything that he could to destroy the world so he can remake it. That was his strong mindset. Those were his goals. And that is something that nobody could have changed. Magneto's influence or even Charles' influence were not going to dissuade En Sabbah Nur from achieving the things that he believed all belonged to him. I should also mention, the actor who plays En Sabbah Nur, the young version, is played by Adetokunbo Cormac. I saw him, or at the least I heard him in the post-credit scene of the first season of X-Men, and now he has become a recurring character in this one. And I have to say, in the short time that he had in this show, voicing En Sabbah Nur, he did a great job of making us both afraid and sympathize with the character. It's not easy to make one of the biggest bats of the entire X-Men universe, or at the very least the entire X-Men lore, into somebody sympathetic. But we have seen En Sabbah Nur having a humanity in other medias, and this one is no exception. But now things are escalating from bad to worse, and now that we see why he wants to do the things that he wants to do and all his goals and achievements, now we can see that things are about to get worse. Now let's talk about what I think is the heart and soul of this two-parter, and that is the dilemma for Magneto and Professor Xavier. We all know that Charles and Eric have their own mindsets. Charles wants peace among humans and mutants. Magneto wants the mutants to be the supreme species to rule the world. And these ideas now come into place into these two-parters, because in this case, Magneto wants to mentor En Sabbah Nur into being somebody that people will look up to him, that he could be somebody and the first X-Men that could help the mutant race. Charles has a more skeptical mindset, because after everything that the X-Men and him went through, it's not easy for him to make amends with a guy who at one point wanted to use him along with all the psychics in the world to destroy time, so only the axis of time could stand tall. And that is something that we see on display here. Charles tries to convince Eric to go home or to not egg En Sabbah Nur more. Magneto, Eric tries to convince Charles that if he could change En Sabbah Nur, maybe he would become Apocalypse. These ideas and ideologies have been in the set of this entire show, because Charles and Magneto are the two opposite sides of the coin. They're still best friends, but they still believe in their own mindsets, and that's what makes them, adversaries in so many times. Despite that, all that I know is that one thing they have in common is that they want the best for the mutant race. Unfortunately, that is something that we see that is going to be difficult for them, especially what we just witnessed. Now let's talk about some of the things that I found very more interesting and fascinating, and that is seeing a lot of the cameos and connections to the larger Marvel universe, and that is what is at the heart of this show. You see, Rama-Tut, the guy who rules the Egyptian times, the pharaoh who has advanced technological advances, is none other than King the Conqueror. Now, we all know that King the Conqueror was supposed to be the big bad in an Avengers movie. Instead of Doomsday, it was supposed to be the Kang Dynasty, and Jonathan Majors was supposed to be Kang, as well as playing other variants of Kang. But we all know, due to real life circumstances, that couldn't be possible, and it was scrapped. But I think this show trying to give us an opportunity to see who King is, or at the very least to show us what is in the comics and in other mediums. You see, King the Conqueror has gone from many names: Rama-Tut, Immortus, Nathaniel, Victor. This guy has placed so many people in different timelines, all in an effort to conquer that set period. His whole mindset is that if he conquers this time, then he will rule forever. But he has been in so many different timelines that everything is just wobbled up and just got complicated. In this case, we see that Rama-Tut, knowing the future of Apocalypse and what he could cause, wants to prevent that from happening. And that is one of the things that the X-Men are now having to fight against, because while King the Conqueror is still a bad guy. And despite everything that he tried to do in order to stop the rise of Apocalypse, all he did was ensure it. But one thing that I found more appealing into this performance, Ramatut, aka King the Conqueror, was none voiced by none other by a Star Trek alumni, John Delancey. John Delancey, for those who don't know, was playing the character Q in Star Trek: The Next Generation. He was a being from another dimension, very wise, very trickstery. He was a very trickstery character that put Picard into a goal of heroic character, but also annoying the hell out of him. So him playing Ramatut, aka King the Conqueror, felt more than appealing for me because it really is a character he was born to play as, or born to voice him in one point. Speaking of Star Trek The Next Generation, I already mentioned Gates McFadden from TNG be part of the first episode of the second season as Mother Ascani. But another TNG character, or at the very least TNG actor that makes an appearance here, is none other than Michael Dorn voicing Ball here. And I have to say, it was so satisfying to hear Michael Dorn play the mentor for En Sabbah Nur, and you can feel the voice and the gravitas of being a conqueror. Like really, it really makes my heart warm to hear Michael Dorn into this character. Now let's talk about another character that makes an appearance here, Kendra, voiced by Matt TV's Deborah Wilson. Now, Deborah has already voiced a lot of voice characters, both in animation, movies, and even in video games. But one thing that a lot of people were confused is that who is she playing? Who is Kendra? Well, if you're like me and you watched the original run of the X-Men, you will know that her entire look, it's appearing to be of one of the External. The External was a very powerful being that was in New Orleans, and was the being that was controlling, or not controlling, but making rituals towards the thief and the assassin clan. One of them was a part where Gambit was a part of, the thief gang. And that is something that brings a lot of people into connection, because the External was in Egyptian times, meaning that she's a mutant as well, but we don't know how long she has lived, for how many years. And it seems to be that Kendra is going to have a major part, because she already had a major part in the comics, and she became someone important to Apocalypse. If you know, you know. Another thing that is fun to mention, Chris Britton, who voices Mr. Sinister, plays Ramatut's second in command, Logos. And let me tell you, he's hilarious and menacing at the same time. I always feel like Logos is like, the descendant of Mr. Sinister. Who knows? Maybe it's true, maybe it's not. I'm probably wrong about that. But hey, it's fun to speculate. And it's good to see, before I continue, a lot of the things that we see from the technological times not only come from King, but also come from the Celestials. Like I said before, the Celestials are major players in some of the stories for the Marvel Universe. There were beings that created the universe. There were beings that were at the center for a lot of stories from the Inhumans, the Eternals, and now from the X-Men. Because these are the people who gave En Sabbah Nur his powers, and now they created a monster that now Earth has to clean up, because Apocalypse is somebody that a lot of people are afraid of, and they don't want to mess with him. So yeah, I love to see the connection. It's good to see a Celestial be part of this show and to be part of the larger Marvel universe. But now let's talk about the shocking moment that made everything change forever, and that is the death of Magneto. Magneto has been both a hero and a villain throughout every run of X-Men in general. Because this is a guy who had his sights already been set in destroying his enemies, making the mutant race very strong, being the only ones to survive. He has been at odds with Charles from the beginning. Ever since they discover each other's powers, Charles has been trying everything that he could to make Eric realize that his goals and ideas are not good. At the same time, Magneto has been has been trying so hard to not only make Charles realize of his truth, but also trying to stop him the best way possible. Every time those two collided with each other, they still managed to find the love and respect for each other. Despite everything they have done, hurt each other, lied to each other, even manipulating each other, or even make each other live in the other's world, it didn't matter in the end because they're still brothers. I know a lot of people want to ship those two because the internet loves to make guys like Charles and Magneto, gay, even though we know that's not true. This is still an important connection between two men that really had a bond with each other for every number of reasons, particularly with the mutant race. It's clear that both have the best of intentions despite their different approaches and different outcomes. Despite everything, they still manage to find their hearts to be supportive of each other. Despite everything that Magneto did in order to kill the mutant race, to kill the human race and to ensure mutant supremacy, Charles has never abandoned him. He has always maintained the hope with each other that he might win. He is helping in the most dire situations. He was the one responsible for helping him find his own children, Wanda and Pietro, in the original run. Charles pushed Eric into live in his world to be more like him, hoping that maybe things would get better while he was still recuperating on space. But now, things have changed. And after this moment, everything will change because in the last moments of this show, after we see Magneto giving his life for people that wasn't exactly from his time or probably were not even mutants in the first place, to see him realize what he has done for probably creating Apocalypse or egging En Sabbah Nur with his mindsets, he realizes that he has to do something to stop it. And the last moments, his acts were more heroic than anything we have seen before. Despite everything that he has suffered, despite every idea that he had, he still believed that he could be a hero, despite all the mistakes he has done. And yet, throughout it all, he managed to be the one thing that Charles always dreamed for Eric to be, a hero for the entire world. But in the last moments, as he sees his best friend dying and give each other the I am sorry, we see him being dead or being killed by Apocalypse and seeing Charles be so upset that he curses his name. That is shocking. And I believe in my heart of hearts that this is going to lead up to a lot of huge moments in both Apocalypse, but more importantly, to Charles' life, because with the death of his best friend and everything that he has said to Apocalypse, it makes me wonder if the psychic probe that he gave to Eric in the first season is going to have dire consequences. And you probably know what it is. But needless to say, this is a shocking moment for everybody. And that is something that many people will see as probably the beginning of, of the change in the X-Men. But now let's talk about something I always wanted to talk about, and that is Apocalypse and Bastion's ideologies. I know what you're thinking. Why am I including Bastion? He hasn't appeared in this season yet. Why am I including him here? Well, for one simple reason. I feel compelled to talk about Apocalypse and Bastion at the same time because these are the two enemies that the X-Men had the most hard time handling and stopping. Bastion being the descendant of the Sentinels, and Apocalypse being the descendant of slaves and imbued with the power of Celestial alongside his mutant powers, all with the goal of eradicating the world and remaking it into its own image. And that is something that I found interesting to compare because both of these men are pretty much similar to how they probably won't be able to see. You see, I already compared Charles Xavier and Magneto's ideologies, but now I'm comparing the ones from two of the biggest bad guys that we got in these two seasons. Both Apocalypse and Bastion want the best for some the people they deem they're savaging. In the case of Bastion, he wants to save humanity from the mutant race, so much so that he imbued the nanotech technology of the technogenic virus into every single person to make them into hybrid sentinels. All the while we see Apocalypse using horsemen and a lot of the technology from the Celestials to destroy the world and then remake it into its own image. No matter how much you want to split those two apart, these are the same goals: destruction and reconstruction. Both they are driven by the same idea, only they use different approaches and methods. Bastion uses technology and the knowledge of the future. All the while we see Apocalypse using all the resources of the Celestials and the mutant race, especially those whom he imbues as his four horsemen, to set up his goals. All of them have different methods and approaches. One is more direct, while the other one is more hidden in shadows. But one thing that they both have in common is that they don't care about anything but their mission. And that is something that is fun for me to analyze because despite everything that Bastion did, despite everything that Apocalypse is doing, one thing is for sure, they just don't care very much about humans or the mutants. They only care about carrying out the mission to one thing, to ease their pain that they both feeling inside. And that is something that it's also worth comparing because what is the goal of Apocalypse of destroying and remaking the world? So he could live in a world where he doesn't feel in pain. He doesn't want to be humble anymore. Bastion, at that moment, has the same ideas. Only in his case is more about making sure that others don't get hurt. In this case, the human race. He doesn't believe that he's a mutant. He doesn't want to let the memory of his mother down. He doesn't want to be seen as a monster. He wants to be seen as a liberator, same as Apocalypse. But the problem is they both are trying to fill a hole that they haven't been able to fill with all the Sentinels, horsemen, or every scheme and destructive, massive catastrophe they have created, all to ease their pains. It just makes things worse and worse for themselves and for the other people. And that is something that many people don't see, but I see it because it's something that Apocalypse has always believed. He wants to remake the world into his own image, so he is not humbled by anything or anyone. Bastion is the same thing. He doesn't want to be plagued with bad memories and fears of paranoia about the mutant race. They both are trying to make each other, or trying to make themselves happy by destroying or remaking the world whatever they pleased. And all they've done in the end was causing more death and destruction. And that is something that the X-Men will have to find a way to stop. Overall, I enjoyed this season. I enjoyed this two-parter. Next week, I'm going to talk about the next episode that comes on. It's a Logan focus episode, ish, more than normal. But until then, check out my reviews. If you have any questions or any thoughts about the Rise of Apocalypse, let me know in the comment section below. Until then, I'm been Enrique, and I'll see you next time. Peace.